I will hereby call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the Sunderland Selectboard. The time is 6:34, not bad for a transitional period after our caucus. Thank you everyone for joining us. Our first order of business tonight will be to approve the minutes from our last few meetings, from 2/17, 1/12, 1/26, and 2/6. Now these are all joint Select Board Finance Committee meetings, so why don't I let you guys call yourself in order and then we can all approve them. Val?
Sorry.
Do you want to call your committee
I'd
order?
like to call the finance committee meeting to order.
Wonderful.
Joe Elias will be joining us, but we have 5, so we're at quorum anyway.
Perfect. All right, we will keep our eye on the camera. If someone sees it without us noticing, please let us know. Alrighty, at this time I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our last 4 joint Select Board Finance Committee meetings on 2/17, 1/12, 2/26, and 2/9.
I motion we approve minutes from 2/17, 1/12, 1/26, 2/9.
Second.
All right, we have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, 3-0. Would you like to approve
I mean,
those?
can we, finance committee, vote on the ones that don't include us?
They all.
All those are
Those
those.
are all.
We specifically
Oh,
do
Okay,
those.
so
yeah.
aye, we can say aye too, right?
Oh, yeah, I see before.
We don't have to, wait, you know, we do.
So
We have to
moved.
vote second, yeah, so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
4-0. Thank you. Alrighty. Our first order of new business is the police MOU. Do we have the chief here to talk about that, Becky, or are we going to push that off?
We have that to do.
Okay, great.
You have met Matt when I was not at a meeting.
Yes.
So, Chief DeMetropolis felt that you have been introduced and supported his moving forward. So this is the agreement to secure, funding, for his basic expenses if he decides to leave us quickly upon his graduation from the academy, which has happened a number of times in a number of towns, so you want to cover so that we could recoup at least the $6,000 of costs.
And we had discussed that with the chief when he was here originally. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Any questions from the select board before we vote? All right. At the time, I'd entertain a motion to approve and sign the MOU with the police academy attendee.
Motion to approve and sign the MOU with the police academy.
Second.
All right. We motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 3-0. Thank you very much. Alrighty. That is out of the way. Up to our big item today, which is the select board and the finance committee will be reviewing the state of the 2027 budget, including the 223 budget presentations for Frontier, Franklin County Tech, and Sunderland Elementary School. So that's where we are. All right.
And,
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to welcome everyone tonight, and this is a very, very challenging year for the school. They were very upfront saying they are clear that we cannot afford this. And there have been other budgets that have also large increases to them this year. And our health insurance, while not as extreme as it was last year when we were facing a 20% increase, this year we were told it'd be about around a 15 to 18. Fortunately, it came in at 8.6%. So it's not double digits, but it's still significant. It's still going to be about $70,000. So we have a number of serious other situations as well. So it's going to be a year heavy on strategy and good thinking.
And if I can just add one thing also, just when we're talking about a lot of numbers or percentages, the percentage to keep in the back of your mind is 2.5%, which is what we are allowed by Massachusetts law without an override to be able to raise taxes, and that is the driver behind growth in town, aside from a little bit of new growth. And so when we're talking about like 8%, in the back of your head be thinking, well, we can increase the budget by 2.5%, 8% is a lot bigger than that. So just for context for people to be, when you're thinking about that, that's the realm we should be thinking in. All right, thank you for that. So the first thing I'd like to start with is, since the last time we met, we did get communication from the school committee that they've had opportunity, that their chair has had opportunity to discuss with Darius the situation, and they're coming back with we can still fund the school at this level. That was emailed, it should have been emailed to both the finance committees and the select boards. What that budget looks like is their first level services budget was 18.3% and about $750,000 increase over last year's budget. This one's coming in at right around 10%, and it's more of a $400,000 as opposed to a $750,000 increase. And Jess, please let me know if I get any of that wrong. And so that is number one. That's already a big help towards getting where we need to be. For context, our new growth is a little shy of $200,000 this year.
Our new growth was $34,000.
Let me rephrase, sorry. Our new potential for levying capacity, the 2.5% plus new growth.
Oh, 180,000.
180,000, thank you, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, we're looking at less than $200,000 of new money going into the budget, and again, the schools start going from 750 to 400. Huge help, but we're still, and then for Frontier, we're at 8%. Is that correct?
8.6.
8.6%. Thank
Also.
you. Yeah.
Which is about $250,000.
Yeah. Thank you.
A little bit shy of that.
Yeah. So the good news is that last week we were talking about $1 million between Frontier and the elementary school, and now we're looking at more like $650,000 as opposed to $1 million. But again, for context, our overall budget is $11 million, I think.
It's between 10 to 11.
$10 to $11 million. So $1 million on an $11 million budget is a substantial chunk of money. So yeah, that's
Are
right.
there any other big numbers other than what you just mentioned in the health insurance that we should be aware of on either the expense or the revenue side?
So I believe at this point we've gotten presentations by all of the town departments. And if I'm remembering back through all of them, most of our departments are very luckily, kindly, expertly coming in fairly flat.
The other area is the South County
Right.
Senior Center.
Yeah.
And the EMS, we haven't,
We haven't seen
We
that.
will be
You haven't done yet.
meeting with both of them on the 23rd with the 3 other towns.
Yep. So yeah, those are still up in the air a little bit. But I don't remember any other large.
But the South County, they were asking for $100,000 worth of furniture split between the 4 towns. But there's also the cost of rent and a number of other things. So, yeah, we haven't seen their figures yet, but I think they're going to be an increase over a significant increase over last year.
Yep. Indeed.
I have a question.
Yes, Val.
What's the, so for example, we all go to that meeting with South County EMS and South County Senior Center, and they propose this budget. We all vote together as a school committee, as a select board and finance committees from all the towns, if we want them to change the budget?
No, we'll have to all vote each.
So traditionally, they propose the budget. Each of the towns votes in a echo chamber. It is by themselves without any communication. The point of why this year we're trying to have more communication between the towns is to give an opportunity for the towns to go back to these entities and say, all of us would like you to do X, Y, or Z to your budget, as opposed to any individual town having to try to make that request.
So we're asking questions about the budget together.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions for the finance committee about where we stand currently? Ready?
Maybe Dylan would go through the sheets that he shared for us. Would you mind
Oh,
presenting them?
If you'd like, yeah.
Thank you.
So I just took, the state website does a great job of laying out the Chapter 70 funding for each town. You can look up every town in the state and see exactly how all these calculations come to be in terms of the required contributions as the state sees it towards the different schools. Now, that's not always the same thing as the school budgets, because there's different pressures that Sunderland Elementary has, different from the state formula, but at least it's a starting point to understand where some of these required contribution numbers are coming from. And so I printed out the 3 sheets that lay out a lot of the numbers for Sunderland. The first sheet that looks like this, it's black and white in here. This is basically how they build the foundation budget as the state sees it for Sunderland Elementary School. It has to do with students in each of these grades and buckets, and you can see the different ways that they assess what that budget should build up to, and then what that comes out to be. The second page, it says determination of city and town required contribution. This is where they look at both the property valuation and income, as well as the foundation budgets that they just calculated, and come to a determination of how much money should this town be contributing towards education as a whole, not to any particular school, but to all the schools. For us, that's elementary school, Sunderland, Frontier, and tech school. The third page, which looks like this one here, it says a portion of local contribution. So this takes that total number that they just calculated and said, okay, between those 3 schools, elementary, high school, technical school, how should that money be split up? And again, by formula. So this, I wanted to start here to understand where some of these pressures were coming from. And I looked at the other towns as well, and I looked at last year's numbers as well. And then, Becky, I don't know if you forwarded the email that had some of that summary data.
Did I get it? I was trying to, but I kept having meetings.
So I just put together some of the summary data that showed some of the drivers here, and then the big driver is enrollment. Basically, one of the challenges, it's not a challenge, one of the realities we're facing is that for a number of reasons, Conway and Deerfield especially, and also Whately to some extent, are seeing enrollment decreases at both the elementary and high school level. And we are not only not seeing decreases, we're seeing increases. So we're educating more kids, those towns are educating fewer kids, so the share of the cost burden is shifting towards us. And this is aside from the cost increases we might be seeing at these schools. This is just if they didn't have cost increases, we still would be picking up a bigger share of the burden. And so we have some of the cost pressures that Darius went through at the Frontier and Sunderland Elementary level, coupled with sort of this primarily demographically shifting landscape that's causing our share of the cost to go up at Frontier and causing our foundation budget to go up at Sunderland Elementary. And to me, these are investments, right? We're investing in educating more kids, right? This is, and it's interesting because in tech school, Frontier and Sunderland have 3 kind of different stories about how we're making different kinds of investments. But this is just, it's a lot more complicated than just pencils cost more or we need another this or that. Like there's a lot going on here. So I just downloaded this morning to try to provide some data to everybody. I don't have a big recommendation or report on this, but I put it together, and the summary data I thought was helpful. Let me just see if there was anything else there. Yeah, and we do sometimes get this, a rich person left from a town, and that's why things change. There actually was a huge shift in Conway's income calculation. Their town was in the state's eyes, their income went down by 40% from 2022 to 2023, and 2023 is the year that goes into this year's calculation. However, and I won't go into this here, but the way the math works, that actually didn't change their foundation budget. So it doesn't have as big of an impact as you think. What's actually causing their required contributions to drop is the enrollment drops I mentioned earlier. It's actually not the income piece.
And I will also say that towns in our area are struggling with enrollment going down in general, and so this may be a problem for our budget this year, but in general, it's a sign that our town is having healthy growth in terms of families moving into town, in terms of being a healthy town. So over the longer term, it's worse for us if we continue to have declining enrollment again and again and again, and have a building that's too big for us, and have struggle to figure out how to balance classroom sizes and things like that. So yes, it's rough this year, but I agree in the long term, it's a sign that we're educating more children, which is great news. And also, when you do this for a while, you see it happen to all of the towns in our little area. A couple of years ago, I think it was Whately had a year where the population had just shifted badly for them, and they were seeing like a 30% increase that year. So it happens to everybody. This is unfortunately our year. And so here we are. But you know,
It
it's
was
sort
our
of
year last year too.
it's been our year, more years than I'd like it to be in the recent history. But again, that has to do partially with enrollment in town, and also the roll of the dice in many ways. So here we are.
Just a couple of years, when I first got on the board, I thought some about this and looked at the 4 towns. And one thing I did notice is we have a lot of renters, but that means we also have a lot of college students. So our number of kids, when you do the overall per capita kind of thing, we're definitely lower if you compare us to the other 3 towns. It's just something to keep in mind. So, you know, in some ways we're lucky in a sense, because we have fewer kids.
But,
No, seriously, if you look at the total population of the town, because we have a lot of college kids, there's not a lot of demand for the school like there is in other towns.
But haven't the college numbers been dropping?
Oh, I'm not saying they're not changing, and it's probably, I haven't had a second look at it, but when I first looked at it, we were one of the higher percentage rental towns in the whole Western Mass, so.
and one of the side effects of that is also that when you have that kind of a lower percentage, a swing in that lower percentage is felt more than it would be if we had a higher percentage to begin with.
That's right.
Because one kid is a bigger deal with 100 kids than if you have 500 kids in a school or something along those lines. Anyways, where do you want to go with here?
I think the issue is our understanding of the budgets for the school, and I still don't even have a copy of the budget.
Yeah, I think that's something that is a huge piece of what we need. If we don't have the data in front of us, it's impossible for us to really look at all the numbers together. And I understand that the schools want to wait for a presentation so they can walk us through the data, but we're all here because we need the data, right? We need to be able to, it's my understanding that
He did say it's available, right? But
I think so. I don't
did you find it,
remember.
Dylan?
I think he said it was through the school committee website or something, if somebody knows. I don't have it.
Okay.
It would be great to have, I'm sure it exists. I guess, first of all, Joe seems to be in the waiting room.
Great.
I guess I would ask the question, I don't view, even if I have all this information, as more equipped to assess their budget building than the people that are doing it, both at the school and on the school committee.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I was thinking about this today, is our job just to communicate to them the level at which beyond that we think there has to be an override? And I don't know they're going to be able to get down to that level. If they can, then we can move forward. If they can't, then it's going to be up to the town one way or the other. So I don't know, I'm looking for some guidance. I'm pretty new to this, but
No, and so you said the magic word, which is the word that everyone wants to avoid, which is, do we have to go for an override this year? And so unfortunately we have, again, as I said in the beginning, if we only were talking about the elementary school budget being a budget buster this year, that's one conversation. But even if we were to tell Darius, be brutal in slashing and get us down to 3% or something like that, the Frontier budget alone is more money than we have to spend this year.
Yeah.
And we don't really have the same kind of power with Frontier to be able to ask for those cuts as we do otherwise. We can ask for them, but there's 3 other towns, all of whom are looking at their budget and saying, that's actually not that bad. That looks pretty good for me this year, who are going to have a much harder time convincing that we need you to cut another 5% out of the Frontier budget. And so the question becomes, is there even a path to making the budget this year without an override? And I'm not even
So
sure that's
does
the answer.
that mean should I talk with Deerfield and Conway and Whately and just find out where they're at to
But
see or
the
does
Frontier
that not
budget's
matter?
4.5. It's higher than 2.5, but it's not crazy.
No,
It's-
it
you
isn't.
know,
It's
No, it was
well, so
8.6.
No.
it's-
Ours is
yeah,
the-
ours is
their
that's the
budget.
thing, and that's what I'm
That's what I'm
saying is that
saying.
it's hard for us to go to them and say
Right.
you need to cut your budget down to no
Right.
increase
Right.
just to suit us. We kind of
Right.
have to just absorb the Frontier budget. We don't have a lot of choice.
Right, I think this is investment that the demographics, we can say the system doesn't work or the equation's not fair, but that is what it is, and it's not really their budget driving, it's just the demographics.
And
It's a question up there.
sorry, quickly before to be fair, the same is the case for the elementary school as well. Just to be clear,
Right.
None of this is anyone's fault.
Right,
Just to be clear. Yes, Keith.
So just a different, the Frontier budget increase is 3.9%.
Okay.
And that we've tried to bring it down as much as possible, but but it's the way the regional agreement works that hits Sunderland with the 8%, and that's exactly, it's based on student enrollment. We're the only town that has an increase. All 3 other towns have a decrease. But in order to bring the Sunderland assessment down to around 2.5%, we virtually have to cut. We'd have to have like a negative budget for Frontier. So the numbers are really difficult.
Yeah.
And kind of what I'm getting at is that whatever the budget ends up being, add 4.5% to that, and that's where we're gonna sit. So a reasonable budget, even if they could do magic and get 2.5%, we're still looking at 7% here in town. So that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that like, even if the elementary school was able to completely cut everything down to no increase, we don't have enough money to fund Frontier. And then that's not talking about the health insurance, that's not talking about any other department's increases or anything like that.
Well, on top of that, it's not for this cycle, but there's the tech school. If they move forward with that, that is another thing that'd be coming down the pike, and those annual increases that, again, are great investments in the next 50+ years of these towns' kids' education. So it's not, I think they're doing a great job to plan it out, and obviously people will vote and decide if they want to do it. But that's another thing that, it's not like you want to lean into reserves for 1 year to kind of get through this. Like, this isn't necessarily going away because any of these things could persist. They could also go back the other way. Demographics could change. Some of the pressures on Sunderland with, out of district tuitions could reverse. Like, you don't know, but it's not obvious that they definitely would reverse.
And so we have tried really hard as a select board and a finance committee over the last couple of years to not have an override, specifically so that we don't have override fatigue in town, and so that when we really need one, we have the argument to make that we've been very good shepherds of this budget and we have gone to a place, but that we have no choice this year. And so, we still have some work to do until we can say definitively, but what I feel like we're in a position is that if we ask for an override of 5% over the 2.5, let's say, we would be in a position to be able to meet Frontier and the elementary school and still having to do quite a bit of juggling and magic, but make everything work out. If we don't get the override to pass, though, and we're stuck at 2.5% and $180,000, we don't have, from my perspective, we don't have the option of just telling all of the departments 2.5%. Frontier is still going to be 8%. The elementary school will, even with the horrible cuts, will still be 6%, 7%, 8%, something like that. I mean, 10% is already 8.5% of cut to their budget, which would be, for most years, would be the entire elementary school increase. What I'm seeing is if we don't pass an override, we're losing like a police officer, and we're losing library hours, and we're losing, some assistance in certain things, and we're losing a whole bunch of stuff across the whole town.
But you don't even have enough, your police departments aren't even large enough.
I know. Believe me, this has been keeping me up at night for quite a while now, trying to figure out how we're going to make this all work, which is why, while I don't want to jump straight to override, I also don't want to spend the next 6 weeks trying to figure something else out and running around and not just, pointing at the elephant in the room, which is that I think this is a year where we're going to have to go for an override in town. Joe, I see you. Yeah.
Joe's hands up.
Yeah, thanks. So this is the part I don't really understand. So 5% override, do we know what average cost that would be per household by any chance? I mean, I know it is for my house, but like, how much is it going to cost people, especially our seniors?
I don't have that exact number, but triple whatever a 2.5% would be.
Triple, right? Yeah.
Because it'd be 2.5% and then 2.5%. So whatever your normal tax bill increase yearly would be, and I would urge folks not to be looking at the last tax year's bill because of the weirdness with the capital override. But whatever the normal year-to-year increase would be, you'd be looking at that again 2 more times in order to make it work. I brought this up last week or the week before, and you spoke very eloquently about it, about the assessment going up a bit, and people are concerned about that. And I know, Becky, you had probably 20 people come in asking about it. I just want to share a great quote. A younger guy told me, he moved into Sunderland a couple years, he said, Joe, I will pay whatever. We have a police department, we have a fire department, we have a good library, we have a good school, the roads are taken care of. So, that's a nice, he said, I know Greenfield has much higher taxes. So
it seems like we're gonna have to do the override. I think that's what you're saying, right, Nathaniel? It's like, there's really no choice.
Yeah, I mean, unless we magically find a $500,000 pocket of money that we don't know about, which we spent a lot of time last year looking at all the couch cushions to find the loose change. We're in a position where we just do not have the money we need. And I also second what you're saying, which is that our taxes really are not that high to begin with, but also I think everybody, while you may not necessarily want to admit it in public, knows that everything in life has gotten dramatically more expensive over the last couple of years, everything across the board. And while it's lovely to have the idea of, hey, maybe that one bill of mine, that tax bill, is not going to increase by large swaths over periods of time, that's not realistic necessarily. And we can't run a town on nothing, and we've been trying really hard for the last bunch of years to run a town on nothing. And, that's the argument we have to make to town sometimes. So I kind of think that's where we are this year. I've been talking a lot though. Crystal and Dan, anything you want to add?
I have a question just about the elementary school budget. Is there any way that we could get some context about what are the uncomfortable changes? Like, what are the things that are being cut?
To go from 18% to 10%, so
Yeah.
that we're not ready to publicly discuss that.
Okay.
What's the deadline that we have?
March 9th.
Well, we have our 23rd meeting, so what's the day we have to say we're going to override or not override? Is there
I think by the 23rd of March.
that night?
No,
Oh,
but I mean the following week, by the end of the month.
Okay.
Because we need to have,
need to-
warrant articles that reflect the thing, and hopefully contingency articles built in and whatnot.
Okay.
So it's the same deadline for all the articles being posted before the town meeting, is the time we'd have to know about the override.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my understanding.
I think there could be, a decision-making around the override could go into the month of April if we had all the things in place, but we need to know, so we've got
Yeah.
the warrant established correctly and the budgets.
Joe has another question.
Yeah, so just back to our other budgets. I don't remember too many of them being 2.5. I thought all of them were a little bit over.
They were.
Right.
And so when I say the 2.5%, that 2.5% is just the growth that we can make on the current valuations of the town. So
Yeah.
it's really closer to 3 and a little bit when you add in the 36,000, whatever it is, of new growth. The actual new income year to year is a little higher than that. But yes, you're not wrong that we also have a little bit from all the other departments. It's not like any of them are coming in at 1% or flat funding. So,
Right.
And we also potentially, and you'll hear next week from the Insurance Advisory Committee, they've been hoping to move forward. They had done an increase in the percentage that the employer pays, I think 3 years ago, in '23. And they had hoped to keep going every year, but they didn't. And so they're trying to get restarted. And they'll be here to make a request next week.
Sorry, one more question. So we were talking about putting a placeholder in for insurance of 20%. Is that right? We talked about?
No, our insurance came in at 8.6.
All right, no, but for a placeholder for next year, were we going to put it higher to compensate in case it goes up?
No.
We're just
For-
going to
For
deal with it
FY
when it comes
no,
up?
we're in a different position than the
Right.
the Hampshire Trust towns.
Oh, I know. I totally understand that, Becky, but I
Yeah.
thought we're putting a placeholder in anticipating higher insurance next year.
we had been floating the 15-ish% number before we knew, but
Right.
we've known now for a couple of weeks now that the actual number is the 8, whatever. So our current numbers that we're looking at are reflecting that 8%.
And so that means we should have a little extra there to spread around.
It's not extra, it didn't, I
Yeah.
mean.
It's more like a little less
It didn't
extra,
exist. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
but
just not the worst case scenario.
yeah, it's a little bit less than we're. Sorry, I saw your hand up a minute ago. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I guess if you think about, I know we're not there yet, but going down the override track, I'm just curious. So obviously we'd be looking for, let's say, elementary school to potentially make some cuts that would result in, potentially some less services at that. Would we also be similarly, equivalently looking across town budgets and saying, well, we need to cut there as well if this override's coming forward, trying to share sort of that belt tightening?
So the answer to that is basically what we're here to figure out. And that's really up to the committees to decide how to spread that out. You know, sometimes it's, nope, everybody does 2.5%, figure it out. And that really is not necessarily always equitable when we have certain drivers that are harder in other places.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's more of a, okay, you guys all gave us level services and it came in this much higher, we need to be down here, so you all need to take level services minus this much, and then we come back. And sometimes some departments will be seeing a negative, and some, like the school, might still be seeing a positive, but we've shifted everything down a little bit. I prefer the latter, where we're looking at like what everyone needs, and then having to ask everyone to tighten their belt the same amount, rather than being unequal by that, if that makes sense.
I'm sorry, so what was that process? I'm a little confused
So,
then.
so what I'm saying is that rather than holding all the departments to the same percentage increase,
Uh-huh.
if, just using an example, the fire department comes in and say, I need 4%, school committee is coming in and saying they need 10%. If we can't do that, rather than saying, well, everyone needs to be at 4% and taking it all out of the school, what I'd rather see is everyone's just dropping 2% all across the board. Fire's now down to a 2% increase, school's down to an 8% increase.
Gotcha.
Because then the cuts that the fire department is making is a 2% cut from level services. The cuts the schools are making is 2% from, well, not even level service at this point. At this point, it's already an 8.3% cut. But we're, you know, so I'm saying we're taking a little bit from everybody when we do have to go below level services. Again, the hope is that if we can figure out a way to do this with a moderate override, we could be able to be at the level services or slightly reduce level services for everybody.
So I just had a question about, I can't remember when Tech did their budget. So the places, Frontier's budget and Tech's budget is where we're kind of like, that's the increase that we can't control. Like, we can't even talk about.
Well-
I mean,
Well, tax
we
for
can talk
next year
about.
is nothing. There's
Yeah,
very,
tax
very
is
little.
nothing.
It's
But what was the percent? What was the
It's like-
increase?
It was like 3%,
Yeah.
I think.
2 or 3.
It was very low.
But Tech presented their, what, $200 million building?
Yeah.
And that's
Right.
the problem
Yeah.
going forward, because they're rolling, they are moving, and 400,000, it potentially be a $400,000 a year bill for
30 years.
Sunderland,
For 9 students.
for 9 students.
Because the capital assessment is based on your percentage of population in the district and your percentage of wealth in the district, but not how many students you send.
And also, just to be clear, for 9 students for these years, but then this is a building for the next 30,
Forever.
50,
Right.
whatever
Yeah.
years. So like, you know, we do have to kind of amortize it. Yes, we're paying that much for, I think, the 5-year bond we're looking at, or a 15-year bond, or a 10-year bond. I don't remember what the number was. 30-year bond.
30, and it's not going away.
So,
I just was thinking that. even-
Sorry, we're not trying to keep you up at night.
no, numbers, man, it is hard. No,
So even though Tech didn't have as big of an increase, it's a bigger budget.
Capital.
No, but even the regular budget, even if it was 3, and it was more than 2.5%, but like, what's the increase is still a sizable number. It's bigger than,
Not Tech.
No, it's very small.
No, you got
It was
the wrong,
30
you got the wrong school.
Tech was very reasonable with us. They came in, and I think our total.
was it 100,000 or 50,000?
No, it's like 13 or
Yeah, it was
Okay,
very, very
okay.
low.
or
They're very
7.
I'm just thinking, you know, the pieces that we control, 250 from that, 13 from Tech, and then we have South County and South County EMS. So we're gonna have to, you know, take 250 plus whatever, 13 plus 2 other things that we can't take any percentages out of.
Basically, yeah. And so that's what I'm saying.
So
that
even
if
though
we
it's
don't
not
pass an
nothing, it's more
override,
than,
we
it's more
need
than
to
the library's
recover-
budget, like it's more than the library, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's still a big increase that we have to absorb somehow, even
Yeah.
though it's a small percentage.
Yeah. Those drivers we can't wiggle on as much as we can on other ones. And so if we end up having to not pass an override and come in at the $180,000 increase, we're looking at taking money from all of the purely town departments in order to balance that budget.
So the only increase is only 6.
What I've observed in the budgets is that we've used, Sunderland's typically uses between $200,000 and $300,000 of free cash in the budget.
Yes.
And so that's a really bad habit, but when you do it all the time, it just comes back. And so if you spend it the same way, it's not as big of a problem unless you double it. You know, if you spend 400,000, you're only gonna get 200,000 available. I mean, you won't have it to pay back.
My understanding is that we, in general, underestimate our receipts,
Yeah.
knowing that it'll be higher, knowing that we're gonna end up with extra free cash, because we don't wanna have a bad year where we overestimated and collect less money than we needed to collect in order to balance things. And that's why we end up putting that money into free cash every year, is because we know we're gonna collect more money, and then we put that in the next year's budget, and then we know we're gonna collect more money, and we put that in the next year's budget.
But this year, when we set our tax rate, we ended up lowering our having to lower our local receipt amount and use it for this year.
Okay.
Because we're out of our, the excess levy capacity
Mm-hmm.
is gone. And that used to be like a buffer, that we could use that to balance when we did the recap. But this year, that it worked differently, and we had to use more local receipts.
Okay.
And so I just want everybody aware that when we use free cash, about 200, potentially we won't collect as many local receipts this year.
Okay.
Well, that's important. If our budget variance is, I'm making this up, dropping from 150,000, or from 200,000 to 150,000, we need to be thinking that going forward, we'll only be able to spend 150,000 of free cash to the budget, which is another pressure that we need to contend with in this cycle.
Yeah.
So, Becky, how do we go about getting what we think the good projected number is, if it's not 200 anymore, of variance that will fall into free cash?
I did a projection, and I'll have our accountant look it over.
Perfect.
Jared Aponte, and see if it holds up, and then we can use that.
Okay.
But I wanted to make sure to bring up that other bad news.
No, and while we're on the line of bad news, there's also the capital budget, which we're getting about as much requests per year as we luckily raised with the last increase. But we're not having copious amount of extra money to put aside, and the school roof is coming up really fast. It's been coming up since I've been here, and it's already kind of here. And that was quoted as being like $1 million project a couple years ago. I don't remember exactly the number. And so normally we also put some free cash into the capital stabilization budget. That's something that we have traditionally done, is that usually we're doing about 200 into capital stabilization and 200 into free cash. And so I'm just bringing that up because ideally we would do that again this year, put some money from free cash into capital stabilization, so we're not caught with our pants down in a couple of years, next year, 6 months from now, whenever the school roof goes from being imminent to urgent. So that's also just a consideration, is that ideally we would again do that. Now, in theory, if it's a really hard year, we could reduce the amount we do of that, potentially even down to nothing, in order to have more of the money that goes from free cash into something else go into the operating line. I just get nervous about that for the same reason that Becky does, which is that when you start dipping even further into free cash to balance the budget next year gets even harder, because now we're starting off saying, well, baseline is 400,000 in free cash. Now we have to figure out how to either claw that back or,
And the capital needs are still there.
and the capital needs are not going anywhere.
But the
Nothing
good
cheaper.
news is one of the capital requests from the highway, the paving project, is being pushed back to another year. So we should be able to raise 100,000 of capital stabilization funds.
Yes, yeah, we're going to be able to, hopefully, we have another meeting coming up, I think,
Yeah.
this Thursday.
Potentially so. Then.
We should hopefully be able to start squirreling away some money for long term, for sure. It takes a lot of years of $100,000 to get a roof put away. So I'm just mostly bringing it up so folks are aware that next year's big thing we might be talking about is how to fund that, or a debt exclusion override for that, or something along those lines.
With projects like that, kind of that mid-sized project of $1 million, like it's not going through capital requests like a normal annual project cycle, but it's not a new school. Historically, or do you think about funding that with debt, or do we just try to come up with the money to pay for it in that year when it happens, and hopefully have built up the reserve enough? Like, how do we?
So there's
approach
the
that?
intentions and there's the reality. The intentions is, and that's why we've been talking about this for a couple of years now, is to try to build up the balance in that capital stabilization fund such that when it comes down to it, we have a substantial portion of the roof already sitting there. So our hope was, we don't think we're ever going to get to a place where we have the whole million sitting there. I'm just using the million as an example. But if we could get 400,000 up front, that takes a lot of the pain out of the financing. I mean, that's the goal. The goal is to put as much as we can, especially when you take on more debt. That's just even more in your budget that you have to absorb in the following years. You know. Joe, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to circle back to the override. So if we put forth the override and our townspeople vote for it, and then we're all set. But if they vote against it, how much time do we have to reconfigure how we're going to pay the bills?
So the short answer is negative time. We have to have, if we're going for an override, or I'm not sure if have to is the right answer, but the smart thing to do is to build into your budget at town meeting contingencies. So if the override doesn't pass, this is the contingent budget. Because once the actual election happens and they're voting on that, it's already after town meeting, and we'd have to call a special town meeting between then and July in order to make amendments at that point. So and again, this is all preliminary, but what I would imagine would be we would have warrant articles saying, in the case of a successful override, this is the budget for each of the departments, and then we'd have warrant articles that say, in the case of the override not passing, here is each department's amended budget. And we would, as a town.
So the town people have to believe the override is more valuable than paying less money and losing services.
Yes.
So we say we won't have a police department or a fire department. I'm just saying.
Well, and that honestly is partially why it's behoove all of us to have the cuts that are based on the override be broadly reaching, so that everybody feels the effects a little bit. You know,
Right.
Some people don't have kids in the school system, so why would they care? But it's
Well-
also their this, and it's also their that, and it's also their this, and their that, and their this, and their that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one other thing I was thinking about, which is, you know, as hard as having the override and it passing or not passing would be, the worst would be to have an override, have it pass or not pass, and then have another one the following year, right? Or the year after that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess,
Yep.
what work can we do, coupled with all of this work, which is a lot, to think about things beyond this cycle to try to address these big structural things that we can have, that we don't have any control over? And like right now, like some big ones I see, you know, with health insurance, like what is the, like switching from one group to the other, they're all multiples of not only inflation, but of other health insurance plans in other industries and in other things. And I know every employee group and age is all different, but still, like, it's far outpacing other insurance markets for whatever reason. What can we do about that? You know, the Sunderland Elementary School, some of the mandates from the state that come down around different education requirements for kids, which I support them having them, but what's hard is the state just says, well, you guys figure it out. Like, who do we talk to? And I know that some of that work's been going on at the school committee and other places, but like, how do we tackle 2 or 3, and then on the revenue side, like what other things can we do? Revenue generation. You know, what are 2 or 3 things we can tackle and break up and work on that are gonna be more than 1 year projects, that are not gonna impact the FY27 budget, but that is like investments in future budget pressure relief?
That is a very good question, and I do not have an immediate answer for you. I mean, the first part of your question, the first answer to your question is, we can all be constantly bugging our state representatives and state senators, or at least former Natalie Blaze office and Joe Comerford's current office, to advocate for us at that level. On that same note, I believe that the school committee has been putting a lot of pressure for rural aid increases, which is great. You know, if you are interested and have time to get involved in that kind of advocacy, that is very helpful as well. That kind of direct advocacy has seen results for us in the last number of years in terms of increases to rural aid. One of the things that a town of our size often struggles with is we don't have a full-time grant writer, for example. And so there's often grant opportunities that go unrealized in town because we don't have enough. We don't have people whose job it is to go search those out and find them and whatever. You know, a city like Boston will have an entire team of people who spend nothing but finding money for their cities. And so, not that the town has the capacity to be able to hire one, but you know, if you're asking what you individually can do, we're all empowered to try to find money for the town. You know, there's lots of money at the state level and federal level, at least currently there is, to be able to be found for that kind of thing. We do our best we can ourselves. Shout out to folks like George, who do a lot of really good, and Chief Metropolis in their side finding grants. And so we can support our department heads as best we can in their grant writing processes. All that aside, there's not really much we can do. We really are at the whim of state regulation and independent drivers that we can't control. Sorry, Becky.
Joe Comerford is spearheading some of the rewriting of the Chapter 70 formula. I think Sunderland is being we're in an odd position here. Towns in this position usually are wealthier than Sunderland is. I think there could be more work done about the formula and figuring out what Sunderland's position is and our peculiarities that are letting us be so short-changed. I mean, these are numbers of a very wealthy town usually. It's usually more like Leverett or...
Which numbers do you mean?
The Chapter 70 numbers.
All the
It's
formula.
like, we're capped at 82.5%, like most towns in Western Mass.
But not
So-
all of us are. I mean, I don't think we should, I guess you're right, but there's a number of them that aren't capped.
The driver is the foundation budget calculation,
Yeah.
not the wealth calculation. And it has to do with, again, I don't know the history of how many students we have going to school versus our population. I know you mentioned, I don't know what it was or what it is, but it's definitely on the how many people are going to school side.
It is, but it's also per student. The what the state considers the minimum contribution per student
Right.
is based on the town's wealth, and so a town with lower average property values is going to see a lower. This is your minimum per student that you have to contribute to the budget than we do.
But the formula is it's a little more complicated because it adds for a number of
It
things
is.
around poverty levels, around additional
Yes.
educational support needs, and again, we'd have to look at how do we compare versus other towns on those metrics. Like, is that like, are we different there? Is that what's driving it? I don't know. I just
Right,
think so.
I can tell you, I mean, I went to a bunch of Chapter 70 presentations, and you're right, it's a complicated formula. It is gonna be a few years before it's rewritten, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but I think,
And so the growth of the school is an important factor, and we're not growing. Poverty, we're close to, but we don't cross the line. And then we have, our houses have been valuated higher, and income in this town has been going up, the average income. Those are some of the big factors. And so don't count on Chapter 70 for a few years. They did a study back in 2019 that said it should be changed. Still hasn't been changed. Now,
They've
Jess
been
Corn, I don't know if
arguing
she's still in the room,
since
has done a tremendous amount of
1980.
effort
Yeah.
lobbying, and she's, I think you guys saw her email. She's going to be lobbying 2 more times, speaking to the legislature in March. And there's progress, but we have to convince the eastern schools to share the wealth. And that's the challenge. And that's why we're trying to make connections. And I've gone to the State House a couple times and made some connections with eastern schools and school committee members. So we need them to vote for sharing the wealth.
my point was just that we should have a couple people really working on this, because I think there is, I don't know, I think we need to focus in on the formula. It can make a big difference in the future. And it just doesn't feel right to me. So I just think it's another.
Well, you're
thing
right,
that
it's
we
not
can-
right.
Yeah.
It's not right. It's been that way for almost 30 years. They just
Right.
haven't changed it.
Right, and the solution in the Amherst region, when we felt like it didn't service us, is we used alternate formulas for about 15 years. So that we didn't have this cycle of the odd man out. It usually was Shutesbury. But it's important. And when it shifts like that, if we were per pupil, which a lot of the old regional agreements were, Amherst was per pupil. And if you went back to per pupil, you just want to try to get a grip on it and see if there's any more equitable way that as a region it can be handled.
Val, I saw your hand up a minute ago. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I can't remember what it was. It'll come back to me. I'll raise my hand again.
All right, anyone else have any comments or questions
Oh,
at this
I do
time?
So it sounds like we need to come up with we're thinking, putting forward some kind of override, probably about a 5%, right? But also doing the math on where cuts would come from. So we need to then work with the school, the library, the police department, everybody to say, you know, we need alternative budgets from you so that we're ready to hit the ground running if we don't get an override, right?
Yeah, because what we ask for when we ask for budgets is give us a, you know, level services budget, and if you want to give us a expanded services budget.
But now we need to
We also need a reduced
decreased
services budget this
right.
year, which we hope, we don't never ask for that up front, because our hope is always that we don't have to go there. This is not that year. And we have to have it because if the override doesn't pass, we need to still have a way of being able to balance things.
Good, yeah. Lauren?
So, I mean, I feel like the departments need that direction sooner rather than later. You're
Yeah.
saying you need this information by the end. Trustees only meet once in March. Toward the end of the month, we will not meet before town meeting, I don't think. And I think you need that information both for budget purposes and for explaining what the consequences of not having an override is.
So a little hard to come up with exact numbers without all the numbers in front of us. But assuming the override did not pass, I think our line is no increase at all would be from all of our departments, would be all of our non-school departments. Because if they're all coming in around 4%, and we're looking at not being able to come up with about 4%, we would need the school to take another 4% and have it come down to 6%. We would need to have departments like the library and the fire department go from there 3-4% down to 0. Does that
It's not more than 0?
I mean, it might be more than
Isn't
0.
the school like 70% of the budget? I'm just doing the quick math in my
Yeah.
The
head.
school is an absolute.
I think we need more than a 0 if
Yeah.
that happened.
Well, so that's what I'm saying. We need to figure out, and probably today, if possible, what that number we need to give them is. What are we asking them? And it won't necessarily be you need to be at 0% or you need to be at -2%. It's more going to be we need you to take whatever number you're at now and subtract 5% from it or something like that. So if they started off at 4, now they're at -1. If they started off at 2, now they're at -3. If they started off at 10, now they're at 5% or something like that across the board. Does that sound?
And so there was a comment made at the personnel board meeting today that there's a hope that COLAs will not be eliminated if we go to an override. And the reason for that is the health insurance going up so much. It went up a lot last year. So I'm wondering what you all are thinking about that. Can we give increased COLAs to departments we're asking to cut their expenses in?
I think the short answer is that's more up to the department heads to decide how they're going to figure out how to do their.
When it comes to wages, you can't leave,
Yeah,
the
that's
COLAs
true.
have to be left up to the
Yeah.
select board and the finance committee.
But the other thing that we're dealing with as a town is if we have to do these cuts, we're talking about layoffs, right? So then the choice is, does everybody feel the pain, or do we have, some people have layoffs?
Well, and keep in mind that I'm pretty sure it's more than half of our employees are covered by collective bargaining agreements that will not be affected in that. So we're only talking about the non-collective bargaining
For the
units
COLAs.
losing their COLAs. So we
And-
would also create a unequalness in terms of who's getting the money around that as well.
And most of those folks are part-time.
Also true.
But we're also talking about layoffs at the school. So we're already saying,
Yeah.
some people are gonna get layoffs, right? So,
Yep.
you know, I mean, I'm a big fan of COLAs, but it's on the table like everything else if we don't pass an override.
Right.
We can't protect it more than we protect,
But
like, the kindergarten teacher, you know, like,
the reason I'm bringing it up, because the untalked about driver at Sunderland Elementary is the new contract with the teachers.
Yes.
And that's what, you know, the increase was over $200,000 last year. It's, so that's, and I think, so it's just part of that discussion about wages. So their wages have been preserved, they got their agreement. They might lose staff, they might lose their position. So that's already occurred, and that's, you know, we have to pay for that. And then we have these employees that haven't gotten those wage increases. And now we're talking about not giving them any wage increases while our contracted employees will still get them.
Which is why I don't love the idea of not giving COLAs to the rest of the people in town, when what we're really doing there is we're saying people who are protected by collective bargaining are getting this,
Right.
all this money, and people who aren't. And, I mean,
I think you
But not all
almost,
of them though, like if the collective bargaining employees get the raises and some percent of them lose their jobs, and I don't want this to happen, but then if the non-collective bargaining people all keep their jobs but don't get increases, like, I mean, I don't know dollar for dollar who made out better, but like both sides are giving something, right?
yeah, and that's, you know, that is obviously,
that's the override
You know,
pain.
yeah.
You spread the pain.
So I guess my short answer, and again, this is just my opinion, I'm one person and one board. My opinion would be that if the override passes, we give the COLAs because we're saying, well, this is actually the money we need in order to be able to really tighten our belts, but do the right thing across the board and fund all of our departments and treat our employees the way they should be treated. People shouldn't be losing money, losing buying power with their wages year over year because inflation, no cost of living. If it doesn't pass, all bets are kind of off in terms of us figuring out how we can make $180,000 on one side and more than $500,000 on the other side work.
Becky, do you happen to know contextually what the, like if you had a 3% COLA is to pick a number, like how many dollars is that? Like of all the non-collective bargaining agreement, like, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, if we can
I think
come
it's
back.
about 50,000.
Yeah, if it's 3%, yeah. So-
This is somebody.
It might be less. I'll tighten that number up.
Okay.
Somebody in town may ask me whether or not those collective, if we're in a budget problem, whether we can ask the different groups who have the collective bargaining agreements to renegotiate, i.e. it's up to them, but say, hey, we're gonna do layoffs, or let's renegotiate. Is that allowed? With our union
allowed,
agreements?
I think legally we can ask.
Right, well, we can ask, right, so we can say, hey, the teachers are getting a 4% COLA, how about you keep to your teachers and don't get a 4% COLA, like,
I
we
mean-
could ask that, right?
I think that all sides in those negotiations know full well when what they're asking for is what they're asking for, that means certain things in terms of staff reductions.
I don't think they knew that when they negotiated the contracts. Right,
They do that.
They did?
Oh, they do that. That's what I'm saying. They knew
All
full
right.
well they were asking for something that was going to result in, and we even,
Yes. Okay.
anyways, yes. No, and again, not to get all philosophical on this, but I tend to have my sensibilities fall on the side of labor in a lot of places, and I feel like this is one of those things where if we go to the town employees and say, hey, all y'all, we have a bad budget season, rather than the people in town who are receiving the services having to pay a little extra, you're gonna make less money this coming year than you should. That doesn't feel as right to me than it does to go into the town people and say, hey, if you want these services, you have to pay for them. And if you're not willing to, no, we're not going to take it out of the paycheck of the people we're paying. We're going to provide you fewer services than you would have if you agreed to pay more money. And that's where the money should come out of, is the service you
I think
provide,
that's
not
where
the
they feel
money
the
you pay.
pain too.
And that's, again, if we just
That's
take it from the people,
bargaining chip.
well, why would they ever give us an override if
Right.
they can just take it out of the teacher's pay, no problem. Take it out of the town administrator's pay, no problem.
Exactly.
So that's where I'm coming from, is like it's all or nothing. Either we're able to pay the town, either we're able to fund the town at a level that is reasonable for the town, or the town is saying that's not a priority, in which case that's going to affect your coverage for all kinds of services. But that's not going to affect what we pay our people, because we have a duty to those people to.
And it's an
Treat
unfortunate
them well.
situation that we're in, but that's how you have the universal people that don't want to pay for the teachers' wages or whatever because they don't have a kid in the school. they see it someplace else, so that's how you can
Yep.
you advocate essentially for the override.
Effectively, yeah. That's the idea.
So what do we do to tighten up our thinking around, is 5% the right number if we go that route? Or have you already done that and that is the number?
That's the number I'm throwing around my head because that's where all the numbers that I currently have fall.
Okay.
But there's still like a $150,000 like swing on where my numbers actually are in terms of reality.
And
So
there's
we-
things we still don't know,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Like South County EMS, we already know it's gonna be a large increase because they got the new ambulance and they used all their
Mhm.
reserve funding, so we already know that's gonna be,
Yeah, although they did tell us at that town meeting, the special town meeting, that they, would understand that, they wanted to vote this early. And when we said, well, what are you gonna have a giant budget in the spring? And they're like, oh, of course not. They said that. I don't know if that'll happen, but
well,
More will be revealed.
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
There's a lot of excitement on
Yeah.
the South County seniors.
Well, I'm gonna call them on it when they said about it.
It's a big ticket, a big item
Yeah,
too,
the
if you
South
think
County
about it.
seniors is,
Seniors been waiting for this for a long time, it happened to land in this year, but it's up and it's a real thing for the town, it's good for Sunderland. So
And
it's
again,
not
once,
only-
all of us vote separately, but all three towns,
That's right.
That's
right.
we get outvoted by two other towns, we're on the hook.
not for South County Senior Center, isn't that all three have to
Yeah.
agree?
All three have to
all three
agree,
have
but
to.
EMS, only two?
Cause, well, the EMS is different, right? That's their operating budget, it's not a new building,
Right,
it's
right.
not new furnishings.
A new senior center, we all have to agree, but
Yeah.
if their budget, it includes a bunch of stuff, and the other two towns say yes, then we're on the hook.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
different.
Like if they want furniture, and that's not a,
Well, I
right?
think the furniture
The
is for
furniture's
the
a
new
capital
building,
request,
right?
yeah.
Okay, so all three of us have to be on for that.
yeah.
For that part, but we have seen over the last 5 years and almost doubling every single year of their operating budget when they come back to us. And last year, I very, very clearly said to Catherine, like, we can't do this forever. I know that you were way behind a couple years ago and this has been catch up, but at some point you are passing us and you've caught up and so like, I made that clear last year that you can't
Yeah.
come to us next year with a doubling of your
We'll
budget.
see what they come to
But
us with.
I don't know what was actually gonna happen. So.
Oh, it's more.
I think for a next step action item, I agree with everybody about the COLAs and the equity challenges. So I think we need to give all the areas information. So I would suggest keep COLAs in, and then that allows people to really show what the cuts will be. Don't put that on the table, in my opinion. I just think it's too hard, and then it muddles the conversation. I think we should take a stand, and then it'll then help paint the picture of the cuts.
It's
More
also
clearly.
consistent with our budget practice where COLAs aren't in there because the personnel committee is working on what COLAs are gonna be. So
Yeah.
it's consistent, which is good.
Yeah.
Is the tightest timeline us giving the elementary school committee feedback on a goal or a target? Is that like, am I remembering that right, that's?
Yes. So your guys' meeting when?
That's next week,
Next week.
Monday.
Yep. And correct me if I'm wrong, but what you guys need to know is the 10% budget the budget you're pushing forward, and or, as we're saying, is there gonna have to be a lower non-override budget that you also have to consider? I don't know how much you guys had a chance to look at the new numbers from them or not, but based on my conversations, I feel like that 10% is we've already cut it back as much as we can without it being drastic. Is that my understanding of what you and Darius are in agreement on?
Procedurally, whatever budget we presented at our public hearing could later be cut back down further. We
Okay.
just could never go up from that number.
Gotcha, okay.
If we knew nothing about where they could get to, based on a 5% override, what number would we say? Would it be 7.5 if it's 5 plus 2.5? Like,
So if we can do the
from a
5
top down, like I'm not saying
Yeah.
they should cut 2.5, I'm saying like if we had to give them a number and we didn't know where they were, is that the number we would give them?
So where, again, the 5% is a number I'm pulling out of
Right.
the reaches of someplace.
Yeah.
But that number would hopefully allow for the level services budget, the reduced budget of the elementary school, but the other department's level services budget to be able to be funded if we did a 5% override.
So elementary school at 10% and Frontier at 9, we'd still make it with a 5% override. I don't know. If
I don't know, that's what I'm not
That
sure.
sounds
It could be a little
optimistic.
bit-
Yeah, me
It's
too.
probably closer to 6 or 6.5, but
Yeah.
I'll have the
Well,
numbers for
and
next week, I'm sorry.
One of the other considerations that we have to make is how much do we ask for the override?
Right.
You ask too little, you get it, you shut yourself off being able to ask for overrides in the following years because people don't have the appetite to do it 2 years in a row, but you didn't ask for enough money and you're shooting yourself in the foot going forward. You ask for too much, it doesn't pass, and you're really in trouble. It's finding that butter zone where you can actually get it to pass. The cuts, if it doesn't pass, are harsh enough that people feel the need to do so, but it's not asking people to pay $1,000 more a month in taxes. I mean, that obviously that's an exaggeration, but.
Well, and that's where, to me, more than, I'll use the elementary school as an example, rather than them coming in at a certain percent, I'd rather them come in at wherever they think can be sustained.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to get to 7.5 and then blow up the following year, because then we're toast again. If the place where we can try to sustain it is 10 or 12 or 8, then that's where they should come in, even if that changes the math on what the override is.
Well, and to be clear, I think that's what they're saying is 10% is that
Right.
line. And so, and to be clear, their number's actually 18.3%. Like that's their
Yes.
that's their local services plan. So they're already taking a giant cut for the town. So if we have to make more cuts, if the number we come in at for the override, the percentage we come in at for the override is not enough to fund everything, they've already taken $350,000 out of theirs. At that point, we're still going to other departments and saying you need to bring your 4% down to 2% or whatever it is. But that's a
Well,
question if the override number we get is not enough money. And
Yeah, the 18% is not really level, sir. It's because we have this odd situation this year of the special needs and a few others, and of course the increase in the union salaries. But I just speaking, I got my foot in both places right now, at least for a period of time. And the 10% really is the maximum cut they can do. My fear is the next couple of years, because some of these kids that we have that deserve full education aren't graduating next year. Now, there is some movement that could happen, but we should be concerned. This Sunderland budget might be a bit high for the next few years.
yeah, which again goes back to you don't want to ask for too little, because then if next year's another hard year and we're stuck in this position
Right.
and we can't get the town to agree to an override. And that's
100%
again
agree.
is why
Yeah.
we've been trying so hard for the last bunch of years not to, so that we don't. So we're not on a second year of override this year at least. So yeah, I don't know that we can have an answer today for necessarily what the percentage is, but I feel comfortable, and I would like to hear everyone's opinion on this, telling the school committee that 10% is that's what we're going to go for with the override number. And if we can't get the override numbers to work, we're going to be taking it from somewhere else because we've already taken 350 from them, or they've already voluntarily taken 350 from them. And then we have to, in short order, figure out what to communicate, not just to them, but to all of our town departments, saying we're preparing for a failed override. We need a reduced budget of this much percentage reduced from what you gave us in the first battle. So hopefully between now and next Monday, we can have that all buttoned up, and we'll be able to vote on this coming Monday, which will be another joint meeting with us, on saying yes, we're going to go for a 6% override, a 5%, whatever it is, and we're going to go tell the town departments you need to cut this much for either for the override budget if that's where we end up, but also give us a override fails, you got to cut some money from your budget. Does that sound good to everybody?
Remind me when the South County joint meeting they were all doing?
23rd.
I thought it was the 30th. No?
I think it's the 23rd of March.
Okay.
March 23rd, a Monday, the 23rd?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's 3 weeks from today. Yeah.
So we really won't know until then.
Well, we're gonna have to put together a straw budget.
Yeah.
Right.
It's gonna have estimates for
They
that,
can, I'll
actuals
call her and ask.
for the departments we
They put
know.
numbers out. too.
Well, I mean, there's numbers out
Yeah,
there for
yeah.
them.
Yeah.
I'll just put
There are.
those in and they can.
Okay.
Same thing with South County
Yeah.
Senior Center. There's, all those numbers are there, they just haven't
Yeah, I
been.
do have.
So I will say one more thing,
Present.
Becky, and that is just, please do have a conversation with the town administrators from the other 3 towns. If they're also having really bad budget seasons that don't happen to have to do with the schools for other reasons, there may be more appetite to go to Frontier and to South County EMS and to South County Senior Center as a block and say, like, no, this is a hard year for all of us.
I know it's not for them. They were
Okay.
delighted, because we were in a meeting to review the budgets,
Okay.
and everybody else was like, phew!
Darn.
It's our year.
That doesn't mean that they won't
Right, they might
support
be
us
in
when
their
we're at
district,
the joint meeting with South County.
Yeah.
I mean,
Two South Counties.
Every
yeah.
town would love to save more money, yes.
Yes,
So-
and they definitely would like to save, so I will talk with them and see.
Have the
if-
conversation,
Yeah,
if you don't mind,
there
thank you.
could be something surprising.
Okay.
So Becky, do you think you'll be able to put together kind of maybe a couple versions of a straw budget, with actuals that we know, estimates where we don't? Here's what it looks like at this scenario, here's what, so that we can really, because we really have to pin down where we think that override lands and then what that means for the different budgets so that we can give good guidance to all the different departments and committees so that they can do what they need to do.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Is there anything we can do to help you?
I just am catching up, so another day or two and it'll be out.
Okay.
I keep thinking I'm gonna get work done when I come to work, and, it ends up going in different directions.
Okay.
So I gotta get more done when I'm not here.
There's a question out here.
Just one thing to think about from Frontier's perspective, we've cut 400,000 out of the original budget with an eye towards, we knew that the elementary schools for all the towns were going to have a difficult budget year. So there is an idea of trying to help the entire community, but it sounds like the town is going towards an override, and the immediate, from overrides in past, we're gonna have 250 to 300 people who are gonna vote no immediately. So this follow-up question for going for an override is, what kind of advocacy is this body going to do to try to help that get passed?
Yeah. And that actually is also partially why it's important to have the cuts be across the board, because then you get the people who care about the police showing up to tell their neighbors, and you get more of a coalition of folks who are willing to knock doors and willing to do that kind of thing. We have members of these boards, as private citizens, have done that in the past quite a bit. We can't, as boards, go out and do that because that's a whole other different thing. But as private citizens, absolutely. And once it's finalized that there is one, I know I'm going to be doing a lot of this spring. I'm going to be calling people and knocking doors. So yes, I do encourage everybody in this meeting listening to, through word of mouth and through direct action, try to get the word out of why this is important and why, we urge people to support the town in that. Yeah.
I have a weird kind of comment on, so the last time we did a big override, my daughter was about 7 and she's 24, right? And she remembers that time when we were organizing and fundraising and organizing and getting out the vote and making signs as so much fun, right? Like it like made her feel connected to her community. Like
Is she gonna come back and knock on some doors?
I looked at, maybe I'll get her to come back. I think we have a couple signs still in the garage. So it was community building. I know it was a miserable experience in the end when it failed and huge cuts, but it was a huge community building experience that this town benefited from the last 15 years or so. That community building that happened during that. So it sounds like Pollyanna, but I'm just saying the process of, getting support for our community and our town and getting more people involved in that support for our community and town has helped our community and town even when it didn't work. So,
Yep.
It's weird, but it's true. So, that's a 24-year-old's position. She doesn't remember the sleepless nights wondering how the vote was going, but,
Any
she's
more-
like, lots of parties.
Any more questions or comments from the select board or the finance committee on any of this?
Do we vote as a recommendation right now at all, or?
We don't have
Not yet. Hopefully by next meeting
Okay.
we'll be able to have numbers in order to actually
Okay.
vote on those. But my hope is next meeting we will be able to vote on what the override percentage is and what the percentage cuts we need to ask from the town. And honestly, they're probably gonna be the same number, because if we don't get the 6%, we're gonna have to ask for 6% from everybody, or whatever it is. But yeah, we'll,
I just, yeah.
go ahead, Joe.
You recall Frontier's cutting 6 positions, right? So, that's Frontier. I don't know what this means to Sunderland. If the override doesn't pass, do we ask them to bring it down to 8%, or are we settled on? I don't make my school committee more work, but are we settled on that 10%? I support that 10%, but if the override doesn't pass,
You can't.
we're asking every other department to cut. Do we say, can you squeeze 1 more percent or 2 more percent out?
I mean, so my short answer is, the other departments haven't already cut, whereas this school already has cut the
Right.
8.3%.
Good point.
So I would be, before I ask the school to cut more, I would ask the other departments to do their first round of cutting that the school committee has already, I mean, they could have not done this already. They could be like, nope, 18.3% is the number. You guys figure out how to make this work. They're doing a lot of our work for us in that respect. So before I would go to them and say, you need to be at 8% instead of 10, for the override, I would be
Yeah.
asking the other departments to come down a little bit.
Yeah.
Although with the math, I think it has to be both.
It may end up being, I don't know, but we'll.
The math won't work. It has to be
We'll hopefully
both.
know by next,
And
but-
will you share the sob story about the perfect storm that's going on at the elementary school and say, this is why, like, this is unusual? We have these, these situations, or are you just gonna say, hey, or you're saying, listen, they were 18%, they cut it down to 10. Can you try to do the same?
Yeah.
I personally don't think you should go down that road or saying this is a unique situation, because the next thing's gonna come and something else is
Yeah.
gonna cost money, and then you're
And then that's
pinpointing
your
and
next
targeting
unique
people,
situation.
and it's not,
Okay.
not a great feel or look.
It's a storm, but we have lots of storms.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
exactly.
and I think it's really, that's just
I like
the
that
messaging.
quote now.
The storm
One of the
last
pieces of
year.
messaging in general is that over the last 10 years almost now, we've been seeing much higher increases in the cost of living increased for the cost of everything than what we've actually been budgeting. So we've been falling behind the line of inflation for quite a while, and it's coming back to bite us now in ways that we knew was going to happen all along, but we didn't really have a choice in terms of, like, you cut and you cut and you cut and cut, but then one of those things is going to rebound, and all of a sudden now you're in a position where we can't absorb that, and that's not.
And we had ARPA for it.
ARPA, man, ARPA was great. If we could have some more ARPA, that
But
would.
now it's,
Let's not have another pandemic. Let's take it out.
It's not worth the trade off for sure. No,
Well, that's
but,
why that's how we get a lot of the inflation, it's printing all the money for ARPA, so it's sort of a
yeah.
tough cycle.
That's what caused the inflation to. That's a separate meeting.
I think unless anyone else has anything big to talk about, I think we're all in a pretty good place for this meeting for this stuff. Does anyone else have any last comments, questions, or anything along this?
I'm clearly gonna have this position all the time, but we have a joint meeting that's scheduled next week. The next Monday is just select board meeting. Do we wanna have a joint meeting again? I'm just like thinking as
That's
we're,
the 23rd.
That's-
That's
yeah.
March 23rd. We are.
no,
doing
there's
we
a
have
March
one more.
16th that we don't, March 16th, we don't have,
It's
the
too
finance
bad.
isn't with you
Yeah.
guys.
So
yeah.
I guess the question is more, what's better for you guys? For us to plan that now
No,
and
but
maybe not
it's,
need to?
next week we're meeting with them this week off before we meet with South
If you
County.
have room in your agenda, I think it makes sense to plan it now, and if we
Okay.
cancel it
Yeah.
a week. 'cause we
Yeah,
don't need
I think that makes more sense than
certain-
like next week being like, oh yeah, we definitely need you guys and having a last minute.
So we're
decision.
every Monday
Let's just-
until,
Yeah. Until we
until,
get a
I think
budget.
so.
yeah.
Until we get,
Okay.
until we get a good grasp.
We were hoping for every other Monday, but that was before we had a storm.
Yes. So yeah, if you guys are available to do so,
We didn't
please
get that on.
plan on joining us next
And
month
then
as well.
whatever missing data we have, like, how's that?
Fill gaps,
Yeah.
fill gaps.
Yep. Wonderful. Alrighty, I think that's everything we need the finance committee for. If you guys would like to adjourn and skedaddle on out of here, you're welcome to do so.
Can I, motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Hi, Joe Elias from abroad.
Alright, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Alrighty, we only have
Thank you,
one.
Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. We only have one item of old business before we get to our select board and town manager updates, and that is the Standish Chard Pond update.
I had a phone call, just to remind you, the Standish Charge Pond has a dam, and for many years has been owned by a private family until the state decided that they would look into it, and they, I think it took them about 4 or 5 years, and they came back with a determination last year, before Jeff left, that we are half owners
Part owner.
of the charred neighborhood.
Same thing in East Hampton.
So, as the owner, as the proud owners of a dam, the other party in the ownership, the family, has requested a phase 2 study be done by EEA. EEA is a state agency that does engineering and permitting work for dams. And they want to move ahead on doing this project. They will do the work for free. This might be the last year it's available for free. So it would, and with that information, we could then either decide to take the dam down, to use that engineering piece for a full, a final engineering study for removal or repair.
Okay.
So I think there's no downside on having them do the report.
You had it free, to be honest.
Well, yeah.
I mean, you said free, and I was like, okay, whatever, yeah, please.
So,
Well,
I
on the
guess-
flip side, it gets you into the cycle where if you keep the dam every 3 years, you gotta do inspections. So
Yeah.
it's a thing, it gets you into the.
Now, is this something where, regardless of what direction we go on, there's CCP money for this? Is that something that would count?
Which kind?
Conservation, whatever the,
no, but EEA has a grant program.
they do, okay.
They do have a grant program for permitting, engineering, and construction.
Okay, great, so,
And there's this they dumped all the engineering programs into a barrel, and now
Okay.
you put in one application and they pass it around.
Pick out the ones you want.
do you need us to approve accepting that offer effectively? Is that what you're looking for?
I would appreciate that. I hope you don't, I have accepted the offer because there's no downside, but I wanted to make sure that
Okay.
it was the right thing to do
Yeah.
by speaking with the select board.
Any questions from the board?
I don't think so. I mean, sounds good.
Yeah.
If they'll do the study and tell us what the options are, that's good.
Yeah, and once we have the options, then we'll sit down and evaluate, and the select board determines what direction you want us to go into, repair
With the.
or replace.
Do you want a motion to that effect, or just the verbal, yeah, go ahead and do that is good enough for you?
That's fine.
Okay. Alrighty, that's our only piece of old business. Next up is select board updates. Nothing from me this week, Dan,
I do not have anything this week.
Crystal?
And also,
Moving right along, town administrator updates. Anything from you today, Becky?
I met with the new owner of the Bubs building.
Yep.
I think there's been a differentiation made between Bubs the business, that I think Andrew, that's staying with Andrew, and the property itself is now under the ownership of Edward Contreras.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And he came in to touch base. He noted that things were not very smoothly finishing with Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to have a different type of relationship with the town, so he came to find out what he should do. He didn't know if he needed a permit. I mean, he's very well established in permitting processes. He's an electrician for 40 years. But Tom Quinlan had said to get a permit before you do anything. So before he started cleaning, he came to town hall to make sure
Hey, I'd rather lean that direction, you know. He's gonna err in one way or the other.
I said our door is always open.
Yep.
You know, we're here to answer questions, and so it's a new era at Bubs.
Wonderful. Glad to hear that. If he at some point gets to a point where he'd like to come and see the board, feel free to schedule him to do so.
Great.
Anything else for us today?
No.
Wonderful. All right. Any public comment from those? Peter.
So you can hear me better. I just would like to say about your discussion on the budget. I'm sort of amazed that you had all that discussion without any numbers in front of you. I assume there may be special circumstances because Becky's been out of the office and you have a whole lot of the numbers, they just aren't in front of people. Because my own sense was that there are a whole lot of numbers being talked around about the big picture that I don't have a clue as to, you know, whether any of them are anywhere close to being what we're going to end up in. And so I find that disappointing, but I understand. So I'm hoping that, I'm assuming that next week, that normal spreadsheet you would see about, you know, everything and including revenues, okay, is going to be here filled in as well as possible, okay, which will then show really what size hole we've got.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, from my point of view, it would also be really, really nice if when you had that done, and I assume you will mail it out to the Select Board and Finance Committee because that's the kind of thing you don't want dumped on you when you walk into the meeting, that at that same time you could post it on the town website. Because you end up posting that stuff usually later in this process when it comes just to the documents needed to be presented for town meeting. But for proper public understanding perhaps of what's going on, we need to have the same access that somebody else does so that you can see it, what's current, before the meeting, come in here, be informed, come in here, have your own copy, you can follow along instead of, you know, I can keep up pretty well, but it really is nice to have the piece of paper. So can we see that, hopefully?
Definitely.
Okay, that would be really, really nice. Because I sit here and I hear so many numbers being tossed around and I says they don't know what they're talking about. Specifically. You know what you're talking about in a general sense. You don't know the specifics, and I'm just thinking that the difference between what we're talking about for the budget we want and for the budget with an override that fails is going to be a whole lot more serious than what's talked about here tonight.
Oh, yes.
A whole lot more serious. Okay, and we've had some experience a couple times at least in town and in my time here that we've had a good size override and it went down and the consequences were way more serious than everybody just tightening up a little bit. So I think we need to, I mean, it's part of coming up with a story that we campaign for the override on, okay, is really having a sound understanding of what the consequences are if it doesn't pass.
Yep.
And so for that we need, you know, good numbers, okay? And the other thing you just asked at some point, or someone asked, what can people do, you know, to help the situation? And one area that doesn't tend to get covered, and I mentioned this to Becky in the past, which is the whole area of local receipts. Okay. There should, I remember a long time ago going over every single item in the local receipts. Is this fee, is this charge, is this amount of income, can we raise that? Should we, and doing that on a regular basis, because a lot of the things you're getting money from there, it's been the same price for years, 10 years, 20 years. The fee, all the fees, all everything. You talk about the problems with inflation. Well, you gotta look also at what your places where you're collecting for your services, and why is that all the same price? Okay, now that takes some work, but that can be split up by some, I don't know what, but that's something that's gotta get done. I mean, it's, you shoot yourself in the foot if you don't. Okay, and that also, you know, that's something that comes back to, well, who's, you know, people in town, you gotta pay a fee for this, pay a fee for that, something like that. You know, instead of being $10, it's $50. You know, you do that a few times and then people notice. You're doing lots of things and people notice a lot more. So anyway, I'm just tossing out, trying to be helpful here and not, you know, not annoyed at how we spent a whole meeting talking in generalities, but hopefully next week you make a lot of progress.
Thank you for surviving it, Peter.
And I think the capital budget, by the way, is in fine shape.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and my own sense of how you're gonna deal with the school roof is that once we get rid of paying for the finance, these last couple of years of financing on all the highway department stuff, that we will then put a little bit of money in, but we will certainly, that we finance it basically as much as has to be, and paying off $100,000 a year out of the capital money, and, we just do it. And we don't have to pay for it all in advance, okay? We don't have to pay for it the day we put the roof up, okay? But we don't necessarily have to go out for debt exclusion in order to make it happen. Okay, because, a lot of places, we still got some places that have needs, but we're taking care of a lot of them in the last few years. Taking care of a lot of them. So I think that there's hope for doing it that way.
There is, and with the increased capital stabilization override and collecting it this year, we're actually I agree, we're in a very good place for the capital.
We're in good shape for this year.
Yeah.
We'll have some we're putting aside.
Yeah.
Okay, hopefully we continue that a little bit, at least it doesn't get worse, but, it leads me to think, we can do the roof without a debt exclusion.
Yeah.
We just finance whatever amount we need to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Any other comments from anyone in the audience?
I just had a APR information in the hopper. Should I talk about that now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's the MDAR, the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources, is on the mark for this property in town that is in prime agricultural soil land. It's surrounded by other APRs, and it's 14.5 acres. It's that Brown Cross, where Brown Cross comes over to Russell Street. It's like right there, that stretch that goes out. It's over
The Russell Street Act or the
Kosinski.
Hadley Road?
It's on Russell Street. It goes between Russell Street and.
Like from where the little bridge is towards
Russell Street?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's just there's farmland on both
Yeah,
sides.
it goes from Russell Street toward, what was that, Silver Lane, that stretch.
Oh, it's, yeah.
So this is,
Ah,
I only printed
There's a
it out.
house there.
Brown
There is a
Cross-
house, yeah, so this
Okay.
map doesn't show that there is a
Brown
house right
Cross
there.
Road doesn't go
Is
to
this Brown
Silver
Cross?
Lane.
No. Brown Cross goes to Russell, and this property is on Russell Street. And
Okay,
it
so
goes
it's-
out towards Silver Lane.
Gotcha. So this is
So
the
it's
new
this
house that they
piece.
just put in across from Brown Cross,
Right.
and
Yeah.
we're talking about the piece on the far side of that.
So it's near the chicken farm?
Yes.
There's
Yeah, I think it's right
a horse
next-
farm
I
right
think
here,
it's
isn't
next
there?
to the, next to the chicken farm?
It looks to me like what we're talking about is this is where the horses are, and it's the plot between the horses and
Yeah,
The
used
house
to be
there.
horses, I don't think there's horses
This
now.
14.5 acres?
14 and a half acres.
Was
valued-
Calissa the original?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that's the chicken farm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is the chicken farm. It's 14.5 acres, it's valued at 185,000. The, I'm trying to see the layout of that. Surrounded by APR, because the town has the right to farm bylaw, our match is 5% instead of 10%. And the Conservation Commission voted to recommend this parcel for APR, and we would have the $9,250 as the town match from the Conservation Trust
And you have any
available
fun-
for the.
And you have any funds? Good.
So, what the select board has to do is, post it a certain way and vote on being a co-holder of the APR with the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources, and that the money is available, to provide that town match.
Do they have any planned use for that?
I think it's mainly hay, which is what it is now, hayfield.
So it would continue at that. They're not like planning on putting in a,
What's the
Greenhouse.
protection? Explain what the
They
protection means.
wouldn't be able to put any buildings on it unless they're agricultural related, so.
right, but you could put in a pig farm, you could put in a goat farm, you could put in something that's loud and noisy.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything.
Okay.
It just says hay on that,
Yep,
on the
and that's fine,
information I've seen.
And there are abutters close by?
yes.
yes.
Along the road, there's houses all along the edge of the road.
Just explain just give a quick overview of what it means when you put an APR.
So then, basically, the property is not developable, and the value that is paid to the current owner is the value of what would be developed for highest use of residential or
And that's
whatever it is.
forever, or how's it? otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, there probably is a way to get out of it, but it's in perpetuity when it's APR, and this is 61A now, so it's not gonna change much on the tax revenue for what that's currently generating.
Okay.
So procedurally, we would have to put that on next week's
Yeah.
as an item and vote on it then. Okay.
But with the finance committee come in every week, we'll just put everything on everything.
Yeah, exactly. We'll just,
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes it long meetings.
it's the time of year. We
Yeah,
don't get
it's
out long
time
meetings this
of
time of year.
We get a break in the summer.
yes, and it's 8 o'clock, not midnight.
Yeah, right.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. We
Yeah.
will put it on next week's agenda and vote on it then.
Right.
And congrats on the nomination.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Alrighty, anything else from anyone online? We have a couple of folks, or Donna Elise is online, or anything from our friend at the paper.
I was just gonna ask just a question of Becky after, but I can ask it now. Just if you had the figures for the health insurance increase, so people know what that is beyond a percentage.
Yes, we have a chart that shows the individual, the individual plans and the increases. But I only have the new increases. I've got to get so you can see I could just give you the new increases, that would be enough.
Yeah,
Okay,
that'd be helpful.
I can email you that.
Okay, perfect, yeah.
Wonderful. Alrighty, that should be the end of our public comment. No executive session. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion we adjourn.
Second.
Alright, we have a motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, 3-0, 8:10 PM. Thank you very much.